Hey everybody, happy Carey Price Day. Yes, it's September 1st and today is the day the Montreal Canadiens can pay Carey Price a signing bonus and finally trade away his contract. To who? That remains to be seen. There are a few teams that are talking about it, but what we're going to look at today is what we're going to get after we trade away his contract and what you think a 2C is. Let's drop the puck on another edition of Puck Talk Montreal. Hey everyone, Coach here, and happy Labor Day, the extra day off, long weekend, whatever you want to call it. It's the last one we're going to get for a while. The kiddies are going back to school. Things are getting a little bit more back to normal, and Habs hockey is just 2 weeks away. Chomping at the bit? I am, because there's a lot that we need to talk about, and it starts with the 2C position. 2C. What does that actually mean to you? Normally, back in the day, 2C was your second line center. But that doesn't have to be the case anymore. The game of hockey has changed. It's no longer about left wing, center, right wing. It's about F1, F2, F3. So essentially, whoever you put into each particular slot is supposed to play a particular role on that given line. Whether they're going to be the forechecker, the back checker, or the guy driving the play. Regardless of what their position is. So what is a 2C? Well, for lack of a better term, your 2C is the person that you think is your second best center in your hockey club. He's not necessarily your biggest point getter. He's not necessarily your best defensive player. But really, what is he? I've sat down and I kind of broke it down a little bit in layman's terms. Not that anybody's a layman here, but I wanted you guys to get an understanding of where I'm going, and then I'll present a bunch of guys that I think might fit the bill. So let's start. Part one of being your prototypical second line centerman profile. It would be offensive production, but not necessarily elite. Expected to contribute 55 to 70 points in today's NHL. Maybe more if you're on a stronger team. Since we're talking about the Habs, 55 to 70 I think would be perfect. Usually a strong playmaker who could drive offense with wingers, but may not be the pure scorer that 1C is. That's important because he has to be a strong playmaker who can drive the offense, but he doesn't have to drive the offense. He could, though. And he helps provide secondary scoring so teams aren't so one-dimensional. And that's a lot of what we talk about when it comes to the Canadiens, that they're a one-trick pony with the Suzuki line, right? Secondary scoring, few and far between, not really where we want it to be. So you want to have that second line center to be able to drive play, create plays, be better defensively, and be that defensive conscience up and down the ice that you expect, plus contribute maybe 55 to 70 points. Point number two. Reliable two-way game. Well, didn't I just mention that? Needs to be trusted in all situations, even if they're not as defensively dormant as a classic shutdown 3C. What does that mean? Well, basically it means that you don't have to be as good as your 1C or your 3C, but you can be in between. You often take tougher matchups if the coach wants to free up the 1C for more offense. So, what would that? You could flip-flop the first and second line? Sure. And you're expected to back check hard, win board battles, and support the D in transition. So again, what does that mean? Back checking your zone. So more often than not, as the 2C, they want you to be the first guy back, or F1, on the back check, right? To be able to provide support to your D. And the thing about flip-flopping the second and the first line, it's called a matchup, right? Certain times you want to get your first line away from the other team's first line, or third line for that matter. So what you want to do is you want to establish dominance from one of the two lines. Some nights your first line is going to be the more dominant, and that's most nights anyway. But other nights you want your second line to be that line that everybody hates to play against and draws the attention away from line one, giving line one a better chance to be able to produce. So it balances things out, provides a little bit more parity. Point number three. Face-offs and situational awareness. You got to be good at the draw. You have to be solid, especially in the neutral zone and offensive zones. You got to have possession of the puck. And you might not take every defensive zone face-off. Normally 3C, 4C might get those, but you still want to be reliable. And what does that mean? Well, you want to make sure that your 2C is somewhere between the 48 to 50% range when it comes to face-offs. Right now, when you look at the Canadiens, Kirby Dach is upwards of about 40, 41%, and Alex Newhook is somewhere around 44, 45. They need to be better if they're going to be in that 2C hole, right? So you want your 2C to be somewhere around 48%. That brings you a certain measure of reliability, and it allows the coach not to have to worry the majority of the time about not having the puck and possessing it, because if you look at Marty St. Louis' system, it's based on possessing the puck and not necessarily giving it up to the other team and forechecking hard as it was back in the 90s and early 2000s. Point number 4, versatility. Your 2C has to often shift between being the playmaker and supporting roles depending on his line mates. So, for example, if paired with a sniper, he's the setup man. If paired with grinders, he becomes the line driver. It's about playing different roles when you're a 2C and being able to, change from one type of player to another. Can you be the guy that forechecks hard and separates man from puck with a body check? Can you be the guy that gets in there and grinds the puck along the boards to feed it to other guys on your line? That's kind of what you're looking at, especially if you look at players like Laine and Demidov, for example. And then, of course, your 2C can play on both special teams. On the power play, he's often on the second unit as the bumper or half-wall distributor. So that means he's in the middle, a lot like we see sometimes when Kirby Dach was healthy enough to be in the lineup. And then, of course, you want to use him on the penalty kill, used if he's strong defensively. And those are key things because you want to take away that particular responsibility from a guy like Nick Suzuki. Earlier on, in a couple of shows earlier, somebody made the comment in the comments section about how Suzuki's going to play both power play and penalty kill. Well, a strong second line center provides the Canadiens the ability to keep Suzuki off the penalty kill and save him just for offensive zone situations. Sure, you can use him in a pinch, but Suzuki wouldn't be your go-to. Your go-to would either be Jake Evans, who's shown a propensity to do that, or your second line center, who can take faceoffs and be reliable as well, a lot like Christian Dvorak was last season. And believe it or not, this year, the Flyers are planning on using Dvorak as their second line center. What tier did I have them in yesterday? And then, of course, finally, point number 5, skating in transition. Probably one of the most important parts of being a good centerman is your ability to be able to skate and switch from offense to defense on a dime. Act as a secondary transition engine, carrying the puck out of the zone when the first C isn't on the ice. And that's just it when it comes to your second line center. He's got to be everything your number one center is, but to a lesser degree. He's got to take away that extra responsibility that a Nick Suzuki would have on the penalty kill while still providing offense when he's called upon with his second line mates and on the second unit of the power play. Those are key things. When you do that, you end up in that 55 to 70 range. So, we've talked about all the different points. Okay? Being offensively inclined, being able to win faceoffs, versatility, skating ability, and so on. But who exactly in the National Hockey League looks like that? Well, considering in the last show I went over the tiers and who ranked where as far as centers are concerned, I did a deep dive. And here is a list of everybody I found in the National Hockey League who fits the bill. Of course, on top of that list is Ryan O'Reilly, 55.7% in the faceoff dot. I don't think Nashville's ready to let him go. But with 2 years left on his contract, it would be interesting to see whether or not the Canadiens will go in that direction. Pavel Zacha, Ryan McLeod, two guys that have been spoken about before in trade. You keep looking. I added Brayden Schenn because Zibanejad with 62 points last year, played mostly on the wing, but did play a little bit of center. Chandler Stevenson with Seattle, Wyatt Johnston in Dallas, Mason McTavish, ho-hum, everybody's been talking about Mason McTavish this summer, 50.7% in the faceoff dot, 52 points, But the thing is about McTavish, I don't see Anaheim letting him go because they want to keep him there for more depth. Brock Nelson just went to Colorado. He's not going to be available, but he fits that mold. Steve Stamkos playing on the wing in Nashville. He could be a viable 2C if you want him there. You got Marco Rossi, who just re-signed with Minnesota. Jared McCann, another guy who's been in trade talks recently, or trade rumors, I should say. Quinton Byfield. A lot of people have been talking about the Habs trying to make a run at Byfield, but given the fact that Anze Kopitar is on his last legs as far as his National Hockey League career, I don't foresee the Kings letting Byfield go. Tage Thompson and Alex Tuck, both playing on the wing in Buffalo, could be used at center iceman. They have a propensity to play well. And, of course, the second line center in Columbus behind Sean Monahan, Adam Fantilli. So you take a look at this list. Every single one of these guys can be a number 2 center in the National League. Some are, some aren't. Some are available. We talked about Pavel Zacha. Casey Middlestat, I didn't put him on his list because he didn't have the numbers, but Middlestat is another guy who has been talked about as a number 2C. So there are a lot of players on this list that could be interesting for the Montreal Canadiens. Some, of course, are overpaid. The Canadiens don't want to drop that kind of dime on a second-line center. And some of them just aren't available. So if you're the Canadiens, what do? Obviously, you make an offer here and there, but you don't bet the farm on it, right? The Canadiens are still in the middle of their rebuild. In 2 years, you're going to have Michael Hage as part of the Montreal Canadiens. You're going to have, perhaps Owen Beck or Oliver Kapanen playing more prominent roles at the center ice position or possibly on the wing and contributing from time to time. Time can only tell how that's going to play out. But do you have to rush? Well, as a lot of people have said, waiting for Kirby Dach to come back might be the smart thing for the Canadiens to do. He's looked good so far skating at the Complex Sports of Bell and Brossard in the offseason. But skating in practice is nowhere near the same as skating in game situations, right? Being bumped off the puck, getting that contact, that type of thing. I don't think Dach has taken any contact up to this point, and that's going to be the important part. Both his injuries happened after he incurred contact on the ice. One along the boards as he was sitting on the edge of the boards, and the other one along the far side when he got hit into the boards. They didn't look like much, but they were hard enough hits that it forced him to leave the ice and go take a look at his knee. So is he strong enough to come back? I think this time around they're going to be a little bit more careful as far as his rehab is concerned. They're going to make sure he's strong enough to come back and not try to rush him. I think that's the whole reason why they went out and got Joe Veleno, right? And they do have options in Kapanen and Beck. So if they're stuck, they do have other places they can look. But at the end of the day, they need a better second line option. And here's the other part that we're not looking at, right? And that's Ivan Demidov. If Demidov puts up the point production that everybody's expecting in year one, and I think people are expecting him to be somewhere between the 50 and 60 point mark in his first season, and I don't think that's much of a stretch. And if Patrick Laine gets back to form and plays a complete season and produces the points that we expect him to produce, just being in the center right position means that you're going to get a lump sum of those points. Maybe even more if you play a little bit more on the power play and so on and so forth. So if it is an Owen Beck, or if it is Oliver Kapanen, or if it is even a Jake Evans, the ability to grab points and be that 55 to 70 point player is still possible. Evans had 34 points at the end of last year, played most of those on the third and fourth line. So not really the greatest ice time to produce points, but he still got that number. So given the opportunity to produce in an offensive role, maybe Jake Evans can fill that void. I already made a show about that. You can go back and look at it right here. But at the end of the day, the Canadiens have options. They don't have to rush. They can wait, as Marco D'Amico said, before the December roster freeze. There's no rush. They can even wait after. I don't see the Canadiens being in the cellar as far as the conference or the division is concerned, given the strength that this team has right now. Between their defense and their forwards, they look really good, even without a second-line center. Or your prototypical center, or second-line center, I should say. So what's the rush? The rush is us, the fan base. The rush is we want to be there now. But 3 years ago when this rebuild started, we weren't saying we need to be there now. We were saying, you know what? Let's give these guys the time to build this team right. And now that everybody's gotten a taste of the playoffs, yeah, we want to do better next year. And that means winning a round? Sure. But winning a round doesn't equate to winning the Stanley Cup or having every single piece in place to be able to make a long run in the playoffs. So trust the process, everybody. I trust Jeff Gorton and Kent Hughes and their thought process and what they're talking about when it comes to building this team. Yes, they're going to look. Yes, they're going to see what's available. If there's anything available, maybe they'll take it. If nothing's available, maybe they'll wait until later in the season. If there's something available, they're going to take a run at it. We know that. They've already done that in this offseason. But There's also the fact that we still have maybe a year or two left in this rebuild after this season. So, maybe we can, if we keep our first round pick, we can pick up something in the draft. That's a possibility. Maybe we can use that draft pick and trade for somebody. That's a possibility. You never know. Let these guys do their job. We could talk about it all we want and talk about who we want as the second line center. Personally, I could give a rat's ass as long as it's a guy that fits the bill for me and checks off all the boxes. I don't care what your name is or what team you come from. If you come to the Montreal Canadiens and you produce 55 to 70 points and you're good on both sides of the ice and you win faceoffs, I don't care if your name is Wild E. Coyote. Welcome to the Montreal Canadiens as far as I'm concerned. So let's find the guy. Let's stop with the rhetoric and the guessing. Let's wait and see what this administration does. And let's focus on that. And we can analyze that when it happens. But I guarantee you, whatever Ken Hughes decides to do, it's going to be the right move for the Montreal Canadiens. Bye for now.